Morning, everyone. I'm Jatin Burabai, e-commerce specialist at the Department for International Trade. As e-commerce and the associated ecosystem of industries are vital to the UK and global trade, DIT has a dedicated program for e-commerce. A central component of our work is helping UK businesses with e-commerce marketplaces. And today, I'm delighted that our program partner, Avenue51, are here. They specialize in China and run the Royal Mail branded store on Tmall, which is one of the country's premier e-commerce marketplaces. You'll hear from them about the huge sale events like Singles Day and get their insights on success from some of their clients. Now onto the agenda for today. So on screen, you should be able to see what the agenda is for today. There's a reminder of the UK government's coronavirus business support. Hopefully every company now knows about it and has accessed it, but you can still go on and see what's new and what's changing. We'll talk about the e-exporting program. That's the program that we run, and that is organizing this event. And then we'll have the keynote talk by Avenue51, which is titled Bigger Than Black Friday, How to Win the Big Sale Events in Chinese E-commerce. And then finally, there's a Q&A session. Now, unlike most of the events that we do, I'm going to take questions all the way through because today's speaker, Byron Constable, has asked if there are relevant questions to pepper them throughout. So as you come across something that you want to have answered, please put it into the Q&A box on the right-hand side. So just type a question in, and then we'll try and make sure we pepper them through the talk, so that because there's going to be lots of things that are dynamic that you may need answered that we'd like to address as we go on. Please ensure the questions are in the Q&A panel in WebEx, not in the chat bit. This should be visible on the right-hand side of your screen. If it's not visible to you, you should be able to access it from the WebEx menu. Now, on to coronavirus business support. So please visit www.gov.uk/coronavirus/business-support. There you'll find information about reopening safely, about financial support schemes that are available, and grants for self-employed, information about the furlough scheme, and all other types of specific support available to you and the business sector that you're in. And I'm going to give you a little intro on the exporting program. This is the program that I work in and that my colleagues work in. We're specialists in e-commerce, and we think about how businesses can most effectively reach international markets, both through their own selling first-party websites and also marketplaces. And we also work to support the industry generally and speak at events and try and network and create links between businesses and the services that they need. So the program is designed to inform you about the opportunities, inspire you, and support you to grow your sales globally, just as the other teams across DIT do. We kind of guide you to the opportunities from online marketplaces. We give you hands-on support, so there's one-to-one support available. Connect you with those service providers that you need, so it's translation, or logistics, or whatever it might be, and then help you overcome common trading barriers. So that could be, problems with a marketplace, or listing issues, or whatever it might be, or questions about customs, or anything of the sort. The program's got 4 key services, and then a smattering of others. We've been around since 2014, and we've helped about 5,000 plus companies to date. Key sectors include retail and consumer goods, food and drink, fashion and luxury, the core stuff that you'd imagine in e-commerce. But we help other areas as well. In the little icon, you can see there's 4 roundels, or rounded squares, I imagine they're called. There's marketplace partnerships, selling online overseas, great promotions, and e-commerce advisors. I'll talk about each of those in turn. We also, in addition to these, have international trade advisors, which is the primary support that DIT provide to businesses. We've got our embassy network of over 180 locations around the world to help you in a particular country with an issue. There's OMIS, where you can get research done, and there's webinars, workshops, and masterclasses like today's. So the first is marketplace partnerships. So we partner with over 45 marketplaces across the world. These are some of the biggest beasts in e-commerce retail. Rakuten in Japan, TradeMe in the Australia and New Zealand region, got Newegg, which is in US, Canada, and in US, Canada. There's La Redoute, which is fashion in France. There's Mum's World in Saudi Arabia, and of course the big marketplaces in China like JD and Tmall. And how we work with marketplace partners, like you imagine, why is the government talking to marketplaces? Well, we want them to tell us that they're actively seeking to expand from UK brands. We need to know how they operate. We have a dedicated contact to help onboard UK companies. We have category criteria to understand what it is that they want. And then we try and get them to be open to running campaigns on behalf of the UK and UK companies and give special deals for referred companies. Doesn't always happen on that last bit, but we try and we do succeed on occasion. What we give them in return is we try and help them source and recruit UK brands. We list them on our Selling Online Overseas website or webpage. We give them recruitment opportunities to reach UK companies, like the events and webinars we run. We link to the trade associations. We have a dedicated account manager, so that's the person on the other end who's trying to get that information out of them. And we help them with expansion and investment in the UK and partner them with the whole league of businesses in the UK that they need to work with. So it's beneficial for UK businesses. We're doing it for you. And the upside of it is you have a direct route into all these marketplaces where you cut away all the chaff and you can access information clearly and easily and understand the opportunity. And if it works for you, get onboarded. Here's Selling Online Overseas. This is where you can find information about all the marketplaces that we work with. You can discover the different channels by country or by category, or you can just look at them all. Just go to the website and click, and you can see an example of a marketplace listing here. It'll have the description, customer reach and demographics, operating model, information about feed management options, information about seller support and logistics, all in English, all this in a way that you can understand, so that you can make a decision about whether you want to explore it further without having to traipse through all the websites in the native language of the marketplace in the country. You'll have to obviously address that at some point. Obviously, selling in China, you don't need to work in a manner or have teams or translation services to help you work in Chinese. But to get on the road, everything's in English, which means you can make decisions very simply and easily, and you can through this process you can apply and speak to someone who can help you with all of these decisions. This is just something that you should know. When we run campaigns with marketplaces, we try and do something that's called a great campaign. We use the UK's great branding, the assets of the government uses for travel and for investment overseas, as a big popping visual representation of brand GB, and all the products that they list under under that banner or on the homepage under that icon will be from Britain. And so the idea is that it allows the marketplace to show that they're working with us and show that they're working with British brands, which is a great differentiator. And businesses across the world, when they do this, benefit in their sales. It's free for brands to participate. So when we run these, we want you to take part, and we'll tell you about them. And then the most important thing is the e-commerce advisor network. This is where you get one-to-one support. Now, this is there are some qualifying criteria. It's hard for us to help every micro SME that only does a couple of orders internationally a year. But where it's a business of some size, we can provide you with one-to-one support. So that's locally based across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And these are experts in international trade. And the referral process is you work with your ITA, and they can refer you if you ask. Or you can ask for a referral directly by going to great.gov.uk and asking for support there. Now, I've spoken for long enough. You're all here to hear from Byron. I would like to hand over control of the presentation now to Byron Constable from Avenue51 to talk about Bigger Than Black Friday.
Hello? Byron, did you hear me okay?
Yes, Byron.
That's I probably look a little bit like Father Christmas right now. I just realised when I looked at my screen this morning. So happy Christmas to everybody. Hope everything's okay. I'm here today with the CEO of Avenue51, Chow. Chow, can you hear okay? Can you respond at all? Okay, we're still not getting any audio from him, but hopefully that'll be solved. The way that we sort of wanted to do it today was, as opposed to just showing you loads of slides of what goes on in China e-commerce and the sort of the big shopping festivals which you've probably been bombarded about, is really to reveal sort of the framework that many of our brands use to kind of think through how to participate in these shopping festivals and essentially how to be successful in mainland China. So that's essentially what I'm going to walk you through today and reveal sort of some of the secrets, of these brands' success. So who is Avenue51? Well, Avenue51 is, we're essentially one of the biggest online retailers of British consumer brands into mainland China. So we turn over around about 50, perhaps this year around 60 million pounds worth of consumer goods that are sold directly to Chinese consumers. And we do everything. So we not only do we do the retail, we also do the logistics, we deliver the products, we do the customer service. So technically, when we work with a brand, they outsource the whole China retail strategy to us, and we make it all work. In many cases, a lot of people refer it to what they call direct to consumer. So essentially, brands come to us and say, "I want to sell direct to consumer in China, and can you take over everything?" That's what particularly lately, we've been doing a lot more of that sort of type of work for brands that are really keen to work directly with the consumer. And just to backtrack, it was the reason that has become popular, particularly over the last couple of years, is because I think there's a lot of downfalls in the distributor model. A lot of the brands that are looking right now are probably in a relationship or have been in a relationship with a distributor in China or somewhere else, where they hand over the brand to the distributor. They also essentially sell a container load of product, and then that's it. They leave the market, and perhaps 6 months, a year later, they get another order for a container load of products. And again, the brand sort of doesn't really pay attention to what's going on in the market. But typically what often happens, and this is where I'm often brought in to advise sort of at C-level, is that there's a relationship problem between the distributor and the brand. You often find, and it's a very common pattern, is that once it becomes successful, the distributor is turning over maybe 2 or 5 million pounds worth of consumer goods, their demands become stronger. And there's often conflict between the distributor and the brand. And it's what I call the Mexican standoff. Essentially, each person has a gun to each other's head and says, "You have to do what I tell you." And in most cases, they seem to pull the trigger at the same time. And that's really when I get called in to advise some of the C-levels here, some of the very, very large brands that have been successful in China and have fallen into this sort of this problem. And so a lot of brands I'm finding that are mature are starting to shift away from distributor model, which, if you think about it, the distributor model was invented hundreds of years ago. I mean, there's nothing innovative about it. Whereas the direct-to-consumer model really leverages technology. It allows you to essentially keep your products here in the UK and sell directly to shoppers in China. And when it's bought, then you can ship your products directly to that consumer. So it allows you more visibility over the sort of what's going on, who's buying your product and what they're doing. It allows you more control over the investments. So how are people perceiving your brand? You can sort of steer that much more. It's a sort of general control over, who your brand is in China and the value, without actually making any investments in China at all. So this is the most popular model which has been emerging since I joined Avenue51 3 years ago. Prior to that, I'd been living most of my adult life in mainland China. So this is the model that really has been accelerating, and it's been a good thing. I think the direct-to-consumer model really should be evolving and taking over from the distributor model, and there are a lot of benefits. I'm rambling. We turn over, so every single year I think we turn over around about 2 million products. So we ship 2 million consumer products to China. Every single day we have a 747, or in some days, particularly during 11/11, we have 2 747s of British cargo going to mainland China. Brands that we work with, we operate about 150 right now, including one of our biggest success stories is Waitrose, particularly in the light of the challenges that a lot of the other supermarket brands have had in China. And partly it is because Waitrose are very innovative thinkers. You may not know that, but they're very progressive, but also that they do understand how this sort of direct-to-consumer model works, and being very clever. This works. It's a sleep spray, which is very famous, I think, in Britain, I understand, but we sort of took that from a very small start to quite a very famous brand in China right now. And recently, a brand called Optibac, which is a probiotics brand, has been a considerable success story for us. And on top of that, we do a lot of infant formula brands. We're very, very big in the mother and baby space. And we also operate for the Royal Mail. So in the UK, we think of the Royal Mail as Father Christmas, the person that delivers parcels. In China, the Royal Mail brand has become synonymous with an online delivery, an online store. We set up a store with them on Tmall, which is one of the big e-commerce platforms in China. And it's built this year. It was awarded the second most popular mother and baby online store on their platform. So if you consider you're competing with the entire world for that sort of those types of that kind of award, and yet Royal Mail managed to do it. So I'd say the team that work on that have been incredibly progressive, and these are the things that sort of help Avenue51 become market leaders and continue to progress. So that typically is sort of Avenue51's core sort of competency. If Chow could speak, I'd make him speak now. But one of the things that we evolved as a company, and this is what fascinated me when I first came back from China, and I met Chow in Cambridge, where we both live, is that the Avenue51 also has a logistics arm, a courier service, and it enables around about 40,000 Chinese expats who are living in the UK to send products back to their family and friends in the UK. Which is very popular. And I thought this was an incredible resource, but it's a very powerful resource as well. Because what I've discovered since I've joining Avenue51 is that when these Chinese expats are sending or telling their friends about these products they're using in the UK, Waitrose, Honey, sort of Thisworks products, is that it has a profound effect on the purchase intentions of their friends and family back in China. And if you think about it, if this is a student who's studying in the UK, this person possibly has relatively high income, and their family and friends can probably afford imported products and probably want imported products. So you have this sort of natural catchment of shoppers that you're reaching, and it has a profound effect in terms of I guess the perception of the brand. It's very authentic when it comes across through the voice of these Chinese expats here. So apart from sort of enabling these Chinese expats to send products back, we work with them quite closely to evangelize, many new products that we come across or we're working with, and it accelerates the success of those products in the Chinese market. But I'll talk about that later. So what are we here to talk about? Okay, so shopping festivals in China. It happens twice a year. So the first one happens on the 18th of June, and pretty much during the whole month of June. And the second one is on the 11th of November, or pretty much the first 2 weeks of November, and slightly prior to that, but generally the first 2 weeks of November is when those shopping festivals happen. And for a lot of brands, that's the time when it'll probably account for around about 25% of their entire annual sales. And particularly on 11/11. So what you're finding is that you're concentrating almost a quarter, 25% of your sales into probably 12% or 6% of the entire year. So you can see why that these shopping festivals are so important for major brands. But there's if you want to know why it's called 11/11 and why the date, if you go back in time, it was actually started by students. It was when I was in China in sort of the late 2000s. It was a lot of students that were single and they wanted to buy themselves presents, so they came up with this idea of Singles Day. Hence 1-1-1-1, which is I'm very single. And during Singles Day, you would buy yourself a gift. And of course, everybody said, oh, here's a discount. And that's how it started. It was very small, but over time, it's grown up to be probably the most powerful shopping festival and the most influential shopping festival in the world. So that's essentially 11.11, and 618 is a similar version of that, which is actually set up by a competitor called JD, which is a competitor to Tmall and Alibaba, and they've been equally successful. 618 is kind of a play on words in China as well. And it means kind of like be very successful and wealthy, as Liu Yaba. So sort of both of them are a play on words, which is quite common in China. Now, one of the things that I've often got the feedback, so since coming back to the UK and sort of getting really excited about this, is that you find that most of the brands that hear about what's going on in China, and I'm sure all of you have seen, all the news about Charlotte Tilbury sort of selling so much, and Dyson sort of selling millions of pounds in seconds. And it was the way it was best described to me was it was like the fun fair had come to town, and there were these amazing rides, and you wanted to ride on them, but you just didn't know how to get a ticket. And I thought that was quite interesting, because that really is a lot of the cases, is how do you become one of these success stories that you keep reading about? And as I said, I'm not going to go into too many of them, because just search 1111 on the internet and you'll find thousands of them. But how do you actually become one? What do you need to put into place? And that's really what I wanted to talk to you about today. So I'll start to go through that chat. Has there been any audio improvements yet? I assume not. Matt, did you manage to solve it at all?
Not currently.
No. Okay. I'll just carry on. It was so. Let me just move you across to the first slide. Sorry, am I going the wrong way now? There we go. All right. Rather confusing slide, but I mean, it is Christmas, so I guess some of us will be getting watches. In China, you would never give a watch as a Christmas present. It's just synonymous with death. So, and I've made that mistake before. But I'm going to talk about a watch, just to give you a bit of a framework in order to how to think. The idea came when I came back from China, and I was living in Cambridge, and I just met Chow, who was one of the founders of Avenue51, and it was quite fascinating what he had. But I wanted to work with them, but I couldn't figure out a framework on how that we would sort of accelerate and make the sort of China e-commerce a success here. And I was quite lucky, because I was invited into the sort of the academic circles here in Cambridge, and it was one particular day I was in the Trinity College in the Master's Lodge there, and I just happened to be invited in, and there's these Nobel Prize winners. It was incredible, the people there, and my only conversation I could have was about retail, which, as you can imagine, was pretty drab. But I did talk about this kind of idea that we needed a framework to accelerate this sort of e-commerce opportunity for British brands, and I was instantly dismissed, except by this one gentleman. I remember he was sitting by a fire. I had no idea what he was. But he came up with the idea, and he just said it quickly. He said he needs a watchmaker's watch, and I had no idea what he was talking about, and sort of left out, and everybody kind of mumbled, yes, a watchmaker's watch would be a wonderful idea, and that's how he should progress. And so somebody explained to me how a watchmaker's watch works, and what I'm going to do is take you to the next slide and explain to you, because I think giving you this as a gift, it was on how this works, is probably going to make it easier for you to succeed, not just in China, but I think in many other markets as well. So the idea was explained to me is that a watchmaker, if he makes a watch for a person, technically he would make a watch that keeps really accurate time, and it would have 12 different segments on it. And this is a classic watch. But if a watchmaker was to make a watch for himself, he would make it differently. Now, it would have the complex mechanics and the background, but on the forefront of it, it would have only 4 segments. And the 4 segments would essentially be his cycle, the way his business runs, essentially how he works, and one hand. Now, the way he operates is that first he makes stock. So he makes the watch, so he's got stock. He then tells somebody about the watch, shares the enthusiasm about it. He then puts it in his shop where somebody buys it. And then he delivers it to their house, assuming that this is a wealthy person buying the watch. And that's one complete cycle. Now, that one cycle takes him one day. And as you can imagine, that second hand moves around very, very slowly. And the idea is that how can you move that second hand through that same 4 quadrants faster? So, of course, he makes more stock. He uses newspapers to tell more people. He distributes through more shops, and he delivers, has more people to deliver his product. So this is essentially the whole cycle I'm going to walk you through today and explain to you in detail some of the technical and the costs that are associated with each of these components that you'll be doing. Now, if you don't have this set up, then it's very, very hard to succeed in any of these shopping festivals. This sort of illusion that you actually just turn up a few weeks beforehand and do a discount and that everybody will want your product is an illusion. You need to have this set up, and it does take months to set these components up and get them moving quickly. So that's what I'm going to sort of walk you through. Now, the first part is what we call the stock. So if you're selling a watch, or if you're selling skincare, or if you're selling bags, it doesn't matter, or if you're selling honey like we do, we sell a lot of honey for Waitrose. How do you know which of the stock items that you should be selling in China? It's a good question. The first way that we typically start that off is by actually asking the Chinese expats. Remember I talked to you about this resource that we have. We actually ask them to look at your website and say, if you were given 3 of these products, which ones would you be given? Which one would you like? So what we're trying to narrow it down is from your SKU range of maybe tens, hundreds or thousands down to maybe around about 20 or 10 SKUs that will be relevant for China. Now, those particular SKUs, once we've actually narrowed down that selection, it's quite easy to get that feedback. You then need to look at which of those particular SKUs can be made in mass. So if they suddenly become super popular, can you produce those products? Because there's no point having a popular SKU, which you can only make 12 or 15 of a day. Okay, so you do also look at the profitability of those SKUs. Now, there's certain brands in the UK which sell honey. And they actually sell, this is not Waitrose, but this is other brands. So they actually sell their honey. And if you go into a store, it's £30 for the honey. But actually, the actual cost of the honey is obviously very, very low. And their margins are quite high. It's the same with skincare, which partly explains why the skincare category is doing very well. But you're looking at products that technically do have reasonably good margins, because you've got to incorporate a lot more costs because you're shipping the products 5,000 miles away. So this is the first part that you need to look at, is stock. Which stock items should I sell in China? And you can solve that problem. As I said, Avenue51 have a resource, and you can do this yourself if you have access to Chinese expats, just to find out what they want to buy. Now, the second part is where the stock sits. Now, at the early stage, typically most brands just move the stock, a small quantity of stock, into our London fulfillment centre, which is set up for selling to China. So you move the stock there, it sits there as if it was your own stock, as if it was in your title. And then it's ready essentially to be listed on online stores in China and to be sold to consumers. So it's that easy to transfer the stock. Now, the only problem is that if you're individually air shipping an item to a consumer each time they buy it, the cost of that can be around about, Chow, you can jump in if you can text anything, but it's around about £5 or up to £5 for one item to be shipped to China. So if you think about it, if your product is a jar of honey and it sells at £10, well, all of a sudden that's you've got to include a cost of £5 into your profit margin there. So it does get expensive. It's a great early stage, and so most of our brands use this at the early stage as we're testing out which of the SKUs are becoming popular. And you can do that at the early stage. So you've moved your stock into a London fulfillment centre. Now, once you understand which particular product is selling well, typically what you do is then you move it by train or sea into what we call a China fulfillment centre. We operate many of those. So the stock is now being transferred not just to London, but it's actually being transferred very close to the shopper in China. Now, the benefit of that is that I mentioned earlier on, to transfer a product by air directly to a consumer is £5 for a jar of honey. But if you were transferring it by train, it may be around about 20p. So if you can understand that the cost of actually moving the product or transferring the product most of the way, 90% of the 5,000 miles, is actually done earlier on in the stage. So the products are sitting in a fulfillment center in China, and it's called a bonded fulfillment center, which means it hasn't cleared customs. Technically, it's not in China, and it sits there. And then when a shopper makes an order, it gets transferred, it gets shipped directly from that fulfillment center in China directly to the consumer. So it takes less time. And it's also the final cost of delivery may be only about £1. Around about £2. So if you can see the cost of actually delivering that jar of honey, it was £5 and now it's dropped down to £2.50. So this is the stock part that you've really got to think through at the early stages, is where should your stock essentially sit? And as I said, most times we do it in those stages. There's some stock which is particularly good for China. So we find technically products that sell for between £8 to £25 really hit a sweet spot. The Chinese consumers can afford it. It's sort of a kind of a more of affordable product. And it also has potentially the margin to incorporate a lot of the costs of the shipping, particularly the transport. The cost of clearing customs technically is not that high, but we'll talk about that later in the ship section. And what sort of stock is fine? We can actually, so through this method of what we call cross-border e-commerce, your stock doesn't need to have stickers on the back. So you don't need to do translations or change any of your packaging. And also the stock can be organic. So you can actually sell organic food directly to the Chinese consumers. You don't need to go through complex customs registrations, which you would do for traditional trade. So you've got that's the sort of the type of stock that you can sell to China. And also the one thing that a lot of people get confused on is the animal testing issue. Animal testing is not a requirement for this route that we're talking about today. So if you're shipping the products through traditional trade, a container to a distributor, you'll probably have to go through animal testing, or it may be part of the process. But with cross-border e-commerce, it's not a requirement. So this is why brands like Body Shop, I understand it was that they're doing very, very well in China. It was a lot of other brands, Lush, and a lot of cosmetic brands, which are against animal testing, but they're using this as a route to be able to build market share in a way that matches their values. So that's technically the stock part of things. Unless there are any questions on that, I'm going to move on to the next stage.
Hey, Byron. Yeah. So at this point, there's no questions from the attendees, but I do have. I want to reinforce one point about the benefits of cross-border e-commerce, specifically for beauty, wellness, and supplements, which is they are the most popular categories for cross-border e-commerce.
Correct.
Why? Because the only way to get these international brands that have taken a position on not doing animal testing because their domestic customers don't want it is through cross-border e-commerce. So the beauty category and the wellness category and supplements is huge. I mean, it is unbelievable. I mean, obviously, we already know that selling in China just generally is huge, but specifically for those categories, they over-index massively. So if you are in those categories and you are sort of umming and ahhing about whether it is going to be viable for you, one, the fact that you are from outside of the market is a huge boon, and the second is the fact that you won't necessarily have to go through all of the regulatory checks and testing that the Chinese government would normally require a domestically selling brand to do. So people actively go to see, like, for example, Korean beauty is huge in the UK now. It's really growing fast. Think of the same sort of mindset. People when they were looking for that thing here, they'd be going to certain sites because they knew it was there. In the same way, they're going to Tmall or they're going to JD to find these things. Tmall Global and JD .hk. They're going to these sites for this specifically. And the same would apply for the other things like the honey and the other international products. This is where they go to. This is where they search for things from outside of their own economy. And that is why these things are huge and growing so fast all the time, because the market is always expanding.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
No, I was just going to actually. You brought up a very interesting point. So a lot of the products that we sell, ironically, are actually already available in China. So a lot of the bigger brands that we work with, that they have their Chinese counterpart. They've been there for a long time, and yet you'll find that the Chinese shoppers are ordering direct from the UK. We operate one store, online store, which is all in Chinese for Chinese expats. And one of the biggest inquiries that we've had recently is for Lego products, and particularly Lego products that are already available in China. And so what you're finding is that as the Chinese shoppers sort of get wealthier and sort of more particular about the products, they do want the original product. And they know that if they order it directly from overseas, and this is really relevant to the skincare and the wellness, because they don't want a substitute. They want to have the authentic product. And so we find that this is a really big component of actually the Chinese shoppers' demand from cross-border, is that they're buying the original thing.
Yes, Byron, I think that's a really good point as well. I mean, I know that, for example, even in the fashion trade, sometimes you'll have things made for a market, not necessarily under license. Sometimes they have different products made for that market that are localized and whatever else, whether it's an accessory like a handbag or it might be a pair of shoes or whatever else. But they will buy the original item from the originating country just because they know that that is the thing that started it all, or it is made the way it's supposed to be made. That's slightly different. Might meet minor differences, but it's also possibly unique compared to the domestically available products as well. So there's various factors that influence this, and that's why this is a really useful way of reaching or increasing sales, even if you are there domestically through distribution.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to move on to the share section now. It's just because the share section is interesting because. As I said, when I was sort of suggested to sort of use this as a model to start to sort of look at how to improve the efficiency of cross-border e-commerce, share is originally the way that we would do it is that we'd make a product and then we would do a bit of marketing. But in the last few years, because of the prevalence of social media, is that sharing is that instead of actually advertising and sort of filling an empty space with a product message, actually getting shoppers to share that message because they love the product and because they enjoy it, has become a much more powerful way of actually creating demand for a brand. Is it more cost efficient? In some cases it can be, depending on how you look at it. But this share component, if you go back to the analogy of this watchmaker in Bond Street making this watch, is he's made an amazing watch, but if nobody knows about it, then nobody's going to buy it. There's no point putting a product on a shelf if there isn't enthusiasm for it. So the share section for us has become really critical. The rest of it can be automated in many ways. If you think about it, stock can be automated, listing on shops can be automated, shipping can be automated. But can you automate the enthusiasm for your brand, for your products? And in a lot of cases, I think the reason why Avenue51 has sort of been successful in this sort of area is because of this resource we have of these 40,000 Chinese expats that are using our service to send back products and working with them to say, here's a product, would you like to try it? And if you do try it and you like it, would you like to post on Chinese social media? This has become such a powerful part of our business right now that we've actually set up a separate initiative, which is called 1010, which is specifically for wellness and beauty brands in the UK, so that they can go straight there to our resource and have their products tried and shared across Chinese media, social media. Now, this is a part where I think a lot of brands do find it challenging, is how much do you invest in marketing or creating awareness of your brand? Well, it depends on how smart you are and how interesting your product is. It really has a lot of the variables, but you really should get that should not be in your first year, should not be a return on investment. If you're thinking that you're going to market and get your return on investment in 3 months, you probably aren't going to be going to the fun fair. You're probably going to miss the good rides because it's just not that easy to do. You really need to, it's interesting, if you look this year, I was analysing some of the data on our brand Optibac, which has its own store now on Tmall. And a lot of people are trying their products and sharing their enthusiasm. And when you search on Chinese social media, people are saying wonderful things about their product. Now, those posts are public, particularly on social media platforms like Little Red Book, which is a very popular place to post about wellness and beauty products and fashion. It's that they're public. So when you search, or when the shoppers are searching for a product, they immediately get that reassurance that that product is worthwhile, is worth trying out, and they look for those references. They do a lot of. My wife is Chinese. She does a lot of research to make sure that these are authentic, that people are talking about the product in a way that she can relate to it. And so this is the part that I really, from our learnings this year, is really to emphasise the sharing part of things. Is get your products into the hands of Chinese shoppers. Now, you don't necessarily have to go for what they call influencers or skinfluencers if you're in the skincare category. These people are very expensive. Now, they do have thousands, millions of followers, but it's a bit hit and miss. And we have had brands that have invested quite considerably on influencers and not had that effect that they want. Ideally, you stagger it a little bit. The influencers can be great. They're like working with celebrities. It's like getting Beckham, to sort of publicize your product. It can be great, but whether it relates back to sales very quickly is not always the case. So I tend to be a little bit sensitive to that. But one thing that does work really well are shoppers. People in China, they have a term which they call KOC, which is Key Opinion Consumers. And these are essentially shoppers that buy the products, try it, and then love to share their on short video or text on Chinese social media. So this is the part that we really, when we're working and advising on brands, is really a good conversation there on how much stock are we going to get into the hands of these shoppers and what is it they're going to talk about? Because you'll find that they'll take their own sort of position on your product. It may be the taste, if it's food. It may be the feel. We had a product that was a skin-related product, and the Chinese just didn't like the tingly feeling of it. Whereas in the UK, it was quite a common sort of normal process to have this sort of tingly feeling. So you're always looking out for these points that they're raising, and then it's really important that if people are saying things that are negative, you get hold of them and you try and understand, and draw on the positive benefits of those, because it might be a misunderstanding. There's the term that we have, which is angels sing, devils ring. The point is that if you have a devil who's going to say not negative things, their bell is loud. They can tell lots of people negative things, whereas an angel can also sing and say wonderful things. You want to make it easy for the angels to sing and tell it, and you want to make sure that you get to the devils quickly and cut the rope as quick as possible. So that's the sharing side of things. And as I said, it's not unusual for a brand to invest in the first quarter around about £10,000 in this section. The other areas are actually relatively affordable. This often is the most expensive part of the complete cycle, and a very important one to understand that you're not here to make a short-term investment. You're here to be able to go to the fun fair rides and participate in the 11.11s. And if you're not famous, and if people aren't talking about you, it doesn't matter if you drop your discount by 70%. If nobody wants your product, there's no point discounting it, and there's very little point often participating in the shopping festival. So really focus on that side as much as you can now. So the next part I'm going to take you to is the shop. So shop is the part where you list the product. So there you've made it, it's sitting in a fulfillment center, people are saying wonderful things about it. Now you need to make it easy for them to buy. So we operate around about 25 different online stores. So we make it very easy for brands to list instantly. And even with the stores that we don't operate, the stores integrate back into our platform, so that every time that there's an order placed, the stock leaves the fulfillment center immediately. It's all integrated. So if you can see here, you'll probably notice that the shops typically are not actually taking any possession of your stock. In many cases, the stock remains in your hands, and yet there's lots of online stores that will be displaying the products and selling them. They take the order and it comes directly through to the platform. Often this is referred to as drop shipping, I think in the West, but it's a more elaborate form of that, I'd say, in China. And in fact, in China, you've got this evolution that's happened, which I think is incredible, where the retailers are actually also doing the sharing. So the people that are actually getting your products, trying it, and they love it, what they do is that they, on their social media store, they actually list it for sale. And they take your product pages or your product assets, and they create a product page with your permission, and they take orders. So it's enabling what we call personal retailers, people that are individuals, to actually sell your products with zero effort. And that's what's probably going to be the fastest, I'd say, sort of transition that will happen in retail over the next few years, is this evolution of the personal retailer. It'll be your daughter, it'll be your son, it'll be somebody who buys the product, loves it so much that they would like to share it, and it's effortless for them to actually list it. So for us, that's actually a huge part of the success of many of the brands that we work with, is these personal retailers. And so that's why we built the framework around it. How much profit? Sorry, go ahead. That's it.
I was just going to say, it's a very unexpected way of selling from the West. People may be hesitant to think about it because they may think that how does that devalue my brand? There are questions around, like, who is this person and what are they doing? The Chinese in market, that's not how the community see it. They just see it as another way of recommendation, but there's a link to buy, and they are advocates and enthusiasts for the product. So it's like, we have the micro-influencer model in the UK on Instagram and other social platforms. This is actually a transactional thing, and it is entirely native, it's entirely natural, it's not forced, and it's not a deprecate. There's no link between the individual and your brand in that sense, but it's about whether the person and the audience they're speaking to has a connection. That doesn't necessarily, so it is a really, really effective way of reaching customers, and it's not, you don't need to consider it necessarily from a brand protection angle, because they are just advocates for you. I mean, anyone can be an advocate, whether they are, it's someone you know or someone you don't online. Anyone could have written a review about and you don't kind of go, well, this person wrote a review, who are they? You just think, great, that's someone who's written a great review about me. And if they've then got a link to buy your stuff, that's a really positive way of looking at it. So make sure you take advantage of this, I would certainly say. Yeah. And Byron says it is one of the fastest growing things in Chinese e-commerce, alongside everything else that's growing so quickly.
It's a good question you have. It was, and I think that's probably one of the greatest barriers for brands from taking advantage of this sort of this new mechanic, is controls. And how do you control, the brand page, etc. But there are initiatives being put into place. Chow actually has a team dedicated to this particular challenge right now, and they came up with this incredible concept. The actual project is called AIM, and the concept is what they call movable product pages. So if the shopper is on WeChat, they can actually go to the store where your product is listed, and they can move the product page directly on to their store, as long as you give them permission. And so at any point, if the brand wants to stop the permission, they can actually cancel that particular product page, or they can actually stop that person from selling. So there are controls, because I do agree that I think brands will want more controls. And the shoppers are getting used to that right now. It's effortless for them to, as I said, take a product page, shift it across to their social media product page and sell the products. But also, it's just as effortless now, or it's becoming so, for the brand to also bring that page back and control what is on that page. And I think that's the evolution that is going to make it more brands more comfortable with this personal retail model. One of the things that also is asked is about the profit margin. So we sort of went through the stock costs as we talked about. Your product sells in the UK for £5. your shipping costs are sort of probably about £5 to ship it if you're shipping it by air to China directly to the consumer. So there are costs there. We talked about share. You need to invest. The third part in shop, there are listing fees. So typically we'll charge between £100 to £400 a month to manage the listings of a brand on a particular online retailer and to put everything into place so the brand does nothing at all and can just track the sales. The way that it works is typically the online retailers are looking for a margin of about 30% of the retail. So if you can think about it, if the product sells for £10 in China, they'll probably be looking for £3 as their profit margin. Now, they will take care of all of the Alibaba, the platform fees. They will pay tax, obviously, in China, sales tax in China. So all of these fees are being paid for by the retailer, and they will, to an extent, do some of the marketing. But typically, you're looking at the retailer taking 30%. In some cases, some brands are more generous because they want more retailers, online retailers, to stock their products, and so they move it up to 40%. But you need to incorporate that into your costs, and that's not too unusual, too different from what happens in the UK. How does the retailer manage pricing and branding? Well, through Avenue51's network, so we have a network of online retailers that we work with, including some that we operate, is that we do actually, the brands can actually enforce a pricing mechanism, a China retail price if they want to. And we do put that in place if it's necessary. And for some brands, there isn't a retailing. The really important part is that you do control pricing across the entire different platforms, though. So I'll explain why. Chinese consumers will go on to different platforms and compare price. And if they find that on Taobao, they could buy that product for £7. If they could buy it, and if you're selling it for £12 on this particular platform, it's all over the place. And what happens is that the shopper ends up procrastinating. They don't actually know where to buy it in the end. So they actually they stall. That slows down the transaction process. So the best, and if you look at brands that are more sophisticated, for example, Charlotte Tilbury, is that wherever you go, their pricing is within 10 to 15% margin. And it's well controlled. It's not suddenly all over the place of 50% off here. And putting that into place is really important. And when we've worked with a number of British brands, we've actually been asked to take over and to make sure that this is properly enforced across the online retail network. There is a temptation to endlessly discount, but that's not something that you need to gravitate towards. Now, when you're preparing for 11/11 or the other shopping festival, normally around about 3 months beforehand that you'll be coming up with a pricing strategy, and it will be discount-led. Now, your probably concern is that I don't want to become a discount brand in China, everybody buying me during the shopping festivals. Well, it's not a bad thing. What you'll find is, and if you look at the models, if you analyse brands like Dyson, is that they're creating demand all year round at fixed price. But most people, maybe 80% of people, will not buy at that price. It's an affordable luxury. It's a luxury, but it's not essential. Now, when it comes down to the discount point, then people will buy. So I wouldn't say that your brand was deteriorating because that you were discounting, unless you're discounting all year round. But when you're discounting during these festivals, it's a healthy thing that's acceptable, and I haven't seen any real sort of degradation of any brands due to this tactic, really. So that's really what's happening during sort of on the shops. As I mentioned, there's lots of different places to list a product. There's WeChat. There's countless online stores there. There's Alibaba. It was a platform. So you've got Taobao, which is kind of like eBay. It's consumer sort of sales, and then you've got their equivalent of Amazon, which is Tmall, which sells directly to the consumers. And then you've got other platforms which are emerging every single day. That all have their own unique sort of aspect. Even if you go to Red, which is a social media platform, that you can open up a store there, and we have a number of stores on there as well. So don't worry too much about the listings. So you want to list as broadly as possible that's reaching your target audience with a controlled pricing mechanism. And that's really what you're looking for. Should you open up a Tmall store? We operate a number of those for brands. It's not always successful at the beginning. To be honest, the Tmall store is a great place. It's like opening up a store on Oxford Street. It's great for your reputation. People will know it, and it elevates you in terms of the perception of who you are as a brand. But does it turn over as many sales as other places? Not always. And so Tmall is a component that we often put into place once a brand has become successful across other online retailers, and it sort of sets the benchmark for the brand. And of course, it does allow brands to buy directly. For example, we do have a Waitrose Tmall store now, but that was not until 2 years into working with Waitrose and to really understanding which products, how to set it, and controlling the pricing in China, that we've moved to that. And it doesn't necessarily account for the bulk of all of the Waitrose sales. It's a contributor. As I said, it sets the reputation of the brand. So that's often a way to look at opening up your own store. I don't necessarily recommend it in the first 6 months or even a year. But once your brand has evolved, it's often a good idea.
Byron,
that's it. Do you have any questions on that?
Just no, I think that you've covered it really well there. I was just going to say we're coming to the end of the hour, so unfortunately we probably want to wrap up it. Although I think we're answering questions as we go, and I don't think we need a Q&A. I'd really like to. I think we probably need to focus on ship and finish within 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, that's easy, but actually, so ship is essentially once the stock is sitting in a fulfillment center, whether it's sitting in China, whether it's sitting in the UK, it's just delivery to the shopper. How much does it cost? Well, typically it's around about £1.50 to £2, depending on your product, to ship from a China fulfillment center to the shopper. The customs clearance for most categories is around about 10%, so it's not contributing a lot to your costs. And in terms of returns for most categories, except for clothing and shoes, is actually relatively low. So we find that that's not an issue. If we do return things, Avenue51 does manage that whole process, of course, and it really doesn't contribute a lot to the costs there. We normally incorporate that into that cost of shipping. So that side of things is not wildly complex. It's a very advanced system for delivery in China. So the consumer can track every single stage of where the product is being delivered. And of course, Avenue51 puts an online customer service team in place so that any of the customers that are ordering and are confused or have a question, it is answered. So the shipping part is really, once the products are in the fulfillment center, remember it costs around about £5 for a kilo from the UK if it's being airshipped to the consumer. But if it's sitting in a fulfillment center in China, it'll be half or a third of that. So a very, very good idea to make that step. So that's pretty much it. Justin, did I cover shipping?
Yes, excellent. Yes, I think customs and duty. I think you talked about customs and shipping and shopper earlier on in the whole in stock section as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really comprehensive. Thank you. We've not got any further questions apart from what you've already covered. I think if we were to, could I grab control, Matt?
Yes, go ahead.
There we go. I've now got control. So just wanted to let attendees know that you'll get a copy of the slide deck after the event and a recording as well. So I know there are some questions around the quality of the audio, but you can listen to it, fast forward, rewind, and catch any of the bits that you may have missed. So don't worry about that. This is really important. If you do want to contact Avenue51, please do. You can contact them directly for sure. Their details are right here on the screen at the moment, and they'll be on the slide deck. But you're also able to contact us at DIT, and we'll obviously refer you on as well. And we can ask the questions and go into more detail about any of the questions that you might have that particularly relates to your business. We do have a Q&A session that is available. We are overrunning. So if anyone's got any final questions, I can wait for 30 seconds and grab any. So if anyone wants to type any in, please do so now. In the interim, so Byron, while we're waiting for questions, maybe one from me. So we know about the Royal Mail TMO store, which is one of the great success stories for Avenue51 and for brand Britain in China. Can you tell us about any of the other kind of multi-brand stores that you run? Are there any others that you can name?
Yeah, it's so a lot of the other brands are dedicated. So one of the online stores that we do have is AIM, which is this initiative that we set up this year, which is a WeChat store, which has been very successful. It's one of our first, and this is the one with the movable product pages, which was quite progressive. The other stores that we have, for example, 51 Best, which is one of our online stores that Chinese expats use in the UK. And as I said, has been partly the foundations of our success in the share section that we work with. But a number of the other stores are all operated for brands.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I've just got a question through from one of the attendees. How can we sell our products to tier 2 and 3 cities? Is the marketing difference?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's so segmentation is possible if you're doing marketing through the Tmall the Tmall platform, and you're using cost per click performance based. They have extremely good data and analytics that you can use. So you can buy cost per click and target particular consumers based on that. It does work well. But again, it was make sure that you've got the foundations in place, because even if you target tier 2, tier 3 cities, they'll look at your product, and if they don't see anybody else talking about it, it's hard to get them to transact and to make a purchase.
That's great. I think, it is really important to note that just like when you advertise and promote in the UK and market in the UK or in the US, wherever, you can actually localize, where you're marketing to. And that's, vital to any business if you're trying to, localize or segment who you actually market to. Another question that's come through, this is from another attendee, is how do you deal with British brands whose products are manufactured in China?
Actually, it's funny, because like Good Hair Day, it was, I think Dyson are also manufactured in China right now. So we have a number of these inquiries. I think it's a great question. In fact, I always think lots of brands should migrate to that eventually, even if they're not there yet. The way that we do it at the beginning is because we want to make sure the brand is perceived as a British brand, and it's probably designed in Britain, is that we initially move the products across the border. So it's made in Shenzhen, it moves across to Hong Kong, and then we often import them back in again for the consumer. It's quite a common method that's used for brands that are sold in that way. So we often do that to preserve the understanding that this is a British brand because it's imported. Now, once it scales, once a particular SKU becomes popular, as you can see with GHD, that you then move across to the local platform. So, for example, Tmall has a local platform which sells products that are made in China. It's not cross-border, and the volumes there are much higher. I mean, hundreds of times higher. You'll be selling much more, and so that tends to be the evolution. But I'm always very cautious about preserving the perception of the brand, just so that they can maintain that premiumness, assuming that the brand is a premium brand.
Excellent. Okay, I think that is the extent of the questions for now. So I would like to say thank you to all the attendees for providing those questions and for listening to us patiently. I'm sorry about the problem with audio earlier. Here's some contact details for us, which will again be on the slide deck and will be on the email. So there's my email there, and there's the general e-exporting contact details. Please visit our great.gov.uk website, which has got the Selling Online Overseas Marketplace Finder. You can follow us on Twitter at TradeGovUK _underline. I've forgotten what the actual that text thing is called. Good grief. I've been up for a while. I've been talking to Japan this morning. I apologize. And you can find your regional office at the same site, great.gov.uk. I am _ Thank you, Matt from Nowcom. My friend, you have rescued me. So our contact details are there. I am available if you guys want to ask questions as well. Just drop me an email, or you can contact your local office. Now, almost every single company who's been on this call will have an ITA, so an international trade advisor. They are your primary route to discussions around trading internationally and exporting, and the e-commerce element will only be a part of it often. So, do contact DIT, and we will be able to provide you help in any way possible to help you with your export goals. Finally, it's a thanks from me and all the other presenters, Byron, Matt, who was hosting earlier, and my colleague Nin, who hasn't spoken but is on the line as well, to make sure that we are giving you the right information. I would like to say thanks again to everybody and good day.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, thanks for having me. Bye-bye.